I gave my sister one of my kidneys so she could live. I signed the papers. I went through the surgery. I accepted the lifelong consequences without hesitation. And while my body was still healing, I discovered that the people I trusted most were quietly dismantling my life around me. But before we continue, please like and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience. Thank you. My name is Daniel, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I've always been the reliable one in my family. The stable one, the one who plans ahead, keeps promises, and does what needs to be done. Growing up, I was often told I was mature for my age, which is just a polite way of saying I learned early how to take responsibility. My older sister, Lauren, was different. Lauren was vibrant, outspoken, and emotionally expressive. She was the kind of person people gravitated toward. Teachers adored her. Relatives praised her. Even when she made questionable choices, there was always an explanation. Always a justification. Everything changed when she got sick. It started subtly. Fatigue. Missed family gatherings. Doctors said it was stress. Then dehydration. Then, let's run a few more tests. I remember the phone call clearly. My mother called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Lauren's kidneys are failing," she said. I didn't know what to say. Kidney failure sounded abstract, like something that happened to other families, not ours. But it was real. Within weeks, Lauren was in and out of hospitals. Dialysis became her routine. The woman who once dominated every room now struggled to climb stairs. The family rallied instantly. Group chats, prayer chains, fundraisers. And then, the question came. It wasn't asked directly at first. It never is. Doctors mentioned transplant options, living donors, compatibility. My parents looked at me. I didn't need to be asked outright. The implication was clear. I went home that night and talked to my fiancée, Natalie. Natalie and I had been together 5 years. We had plans. Solid ones. When I told her what was happening, she didn't hesitate. "If you're a match, you should do it," she said. "She's your sister." I asked if she was scared. She said, of course she was, but that love sometimes meant doing hard things. So, I got tested. When the doctor told me I was a match, my parents cried. Lauren cried. Everyone called me brave. No one asked if I felt trapped. The weeks leading up to the surgery were a blur of anxiety. Natalie came with me to every appointment. She held my hand during the difficult conversations. Lauren leaned on her heavily. Natalie checked in on her constantly, brought meals, helped with the kids. They talked on the phone late into the night, sometimes after I'd already fallen asleep. It made sense. Lauren was scared. Natalie was compassionate. I didn't question it. The surgery happened in early spring. I remember waking up groggy, disoriented, and in pain. Natalie was there when I opened my eyes. She smiled, but her eyes were tired. Lauren's surgery went well too. People told me I was a hero. I didn't feel like one. Recovery was harder than I expected. The physical pain was manageable, but the exhaustion was relentless. I couldn't work full-time for months. Medical bills stacked up. Natalie stepped up. She handled the logistics, the medications, the appointments. Lauren recovered faster than I did. Within weeks, she was mobile, energetic. Natalie was often with her. Sometimes when I woke from a nap, the apartment was empty. Natalie would text that she was helping Lauren, picking up kids, running errands. I told myself this was temporary, but slowly, something shifted. Natalie stopped sharing details about her day. Conversations felt surface level. She seemed distracted, always checking her phone. Lauren, on the other hand, was everywhere. She had opinions about my recovery, about how much rest I needed, about what Natalie should be focusing on. As months passed, I returned to work part-time. The financial pressure grew. I noticed Natalie spent more time at my parents' house than at home. She said it was easier to help Lauren without worrying about me. That stung, but I swallowed it. Then, one evening, I needed to use Natalie's laptop. When I opened the browser, a messaging app was already logged in. At first, I wasn't snooping. I swear that. But a name caught my eye. Not Lauren's. Not a coworker's. A man I didn't recognize. The messages weren't explicit, not at first. But they were intimate, familiar, comforting, in a way that made my chest tighten. I scrolled. Long conversations. Late-night timestamps. This wasn't casual. This was an emotional affair. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to be sure. Over the next few days, patterns emerged. Defensive reactions, deleted notifications, vague explanations. When I finally asked her, she froze. She didn't deny it. She said it started because she felt overwhelmed, because the surgery changed everything. She needed someone to talk to who wasn't involved. I asked if it had become physical. She said no. At the time, what hurt most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the timing. I had given up a part of my body, a part of my future health, and somewhere along the way, I had become secondary in my own life. When I told my parents, the response was devastating. They focused on Lauren's recovery. They said emotions get complicated during a crisis. My mother told me I should be proud, not dwell on relationship issues. My father said life was too short for grudges. No one asked how I was coping. No one asked what it felt like to be replaced while still healing. I sat alone in the dark that night. That's when I realized something important. Saving someone's life doesn't mean sacrificing your own. And I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Because it wasn't, and it was about to get much worse. After that night, nothing felt stable anymore. I moved through my days like I was walking on an injured leg, functional, but constantly aware something was wrong. Natalie acted normal on the surface, but there was a carefulness to her now, like someone trying not to disturb a fragile arrangement. I didn't confront her again immediately. I needed clarity. I needed to understand whether what I'd seen was a moment of weakness or something more deliberate. The messages continued. They didn't slow down. If anything, they became more coded, shorter, strategic. I learned the man's name by accident when it appeared in a calendar reminder synced to her phone. Marcus, a consultant she'd met through a networking event months earlier. Someone she described when I asked casually as just a contact. I started connecting dots I hadn't wanted to see before. The late evenings she said she was helping Lauren. The nights she came home emotionally distant. The way she'd grown impatient when I wanted to talk about us, about the future, about how everything had changed since the surgery. When I finally asked her to sit down with me, she didn't argue. That alone told me everything. She admitted the emotional affair had crossed a line weeks ago. She hadn't planned for it to happen. But once it did, she didn't stop it either. I asked her again if it had become physical. She hesitated. Then, she nodded. She said it happened once. Then again. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I felt something quieter than anger. I felt displaced. I asked her why she hadn't left if she was unhappy. She said, she didn't want to abandon me while I was recovering. That answer landed like an insult. She stayed out of obligation. She cheated out of desire. I told her to leave. She asked if we could try counseling. I told her that counseling only works when both people are honest, before they get caught. She packed a bag that night. The apartment felt empty in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not lonely, just hollow. The fallout came fast. Lauren called me the next day. She cried. She said she never meant to be in the middle. I asked her something I'd been holding back. Did you know about Marcus? There was silence. Yes, she said quietly. That was the moment my perception of everything shifted. She told me Natalie had confided in her, that she'd tried to be supportive without judging, that she didn't want to add stress to my recovery. I reminded her that I had given her a kidney. She told me that didn't make me immune to relationship problems. That sentence stays with me to this day. My parents took Lauren's side, not aggressively, but consistently. They framed everything as a tragic convergence of stress and illness. They praised my sacrifice publicly while privately asking me to be understanding. You're strong, my mother said. You'll get through this. You don't want to tear the family apart over something like this, my father added. Something like this. I realized then that my role in the family had never changed. I was the stabilizer, the absorber, the one expected to endure quietly so everyone else could continue uninterrupted. Natalie moved in with a friend. Marcus didn't disappear. I found out later they were still seeing each other. I didn't ask for updates. I needed distance. Recovery from the surgery was still ongoing, but now I was also recovering from something else. I started therapy. At first, it felt unnecessary, but as the weeks went on, patterns began to emerge. How often I'd prioritized peace over honesty. How often I'd mistaken endurance for virtue. Around this time, my health started to falter again. Persistent fatigue, elevated blood pressure, warning signs that my body was still adjusting to life with one kidney. I mentioned it to my parents. They were concerned, but distracted. Lauren had an appointment. Lauren needed help with childcare. Lauren was feeling anxious. I stopped bringing it up. A few months later, Natalie reached out. She wanted closure. She said she hoped we could be friendly. I told her I didn't want friendship. She asked if I hated her. I told her no. I just didn't trust her. That answer seemed to bother her more than anger would have. Time passed. Lauren's life stabilized. The family stopped talking about the transplant. The emergency phase ended. That's when something interesting happened. The praise stopped. I wasn't the hero anymore. I was the reminder. The person whose presence disrupted the version of the story they wanted to live in, the one where everyone did their best, and no one was truly at fault. Invitations slowed. Calls became shorter. I realized I was being quietly edged out. So, I made a decision. I stepped back. Completely. I stopped initiating contact. I declined family gatherings. I moved into a smaller place, closer to work. I built routines that didn't revolve around anyone else's crisis. For the first time since the surgery, I felt like my life belonged to me again. And just as that sense of stability returned, the past came knocking. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I almost didn't answer it. The number was my mother's, and by then, I had learned that nothing good followed those calls anymore. Still, some habits die hard. I stepped outside my office, leaned against the brick wall, and picked up. "Daniel," she said, already sounding tired. "We need to talk." She told me Lauren's health had started to decline again. Not kidney failure. The transplant was still holding, but complications. Infections. Fatigue. Her marriage was strained. The kids were acting out. Then came the pause. The familiar one. "We were hoping," my mother continued carefully, "that you might be able to come around more. Just to help. Emotionally, maybe financially, if things get tight." I closed my eyes. For a moment, the old instinct flared up. The reflex to step in, to fix, to absorb. But something had changed. I asked her a simple question. "Before I answer that, I need to know something. When everything happened with Natalie," I said, "did anyone ever stop to consider what it cost me? Not the surgery, not the praise. The aftermath." She didn't respond right away. Then she said, "We didn't think it was the right time to focus on that." That was the answer. I told her I wasn't coming back into the role they were offering me. Not as a helper. Not as a stabilizer. Not as the person expected to give endlessly without protection. She sounded hurt. Confused. "But you're her brother," she said. "I already proved that," I replied. "Now, I need to be myself." After that call, I didn't feel relief. I felt grief, not for what I lost, but for what I finally understood I was never going to receive. A few weeks later, Lauren reached out directly. Her message was long, emotional. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she was grateful for everything I'd done. I read it 3 times before responding. I told her I hoped she continued to heal. I told her I didn't regret donating my kidney because saving a life was still a good thing. But I also told her this: gratitude without accountability isn't reconciliation, and love that only flows one way isn't love. It's entitlement. I told her I needed distance. Indefinitely. She didn't reply. Life moved forward after that. Quietly, slowly. Honestly, my health stabilized, though I live differently now. I monitor my body more carefully. I say no more often. I plan with the understanding that my energy is not unlimited. I dated again, eventually, carefully, with boundaries I'd never had before. I learned how to recognize emotional safety, not just chemistry. Most importantly, I stopped equating sacrifice with worth. I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see myself as someone who loved deeply, gave generously, and learned the hard way that loyalty must be mutual to be sustainable. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. You can save someone's life and still lose your place in it. And that doesn't mean you failed. It means you outgrew a role that was never meant to be permanent. I don't know what the future holds with my family. Maybe one day there will be real conversations. But if there isn't, I'm okay with that too, because peace is not something you negotiate by shrinking yourself. It's something you build, one boundary at a time. Final call to action. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the one expected to give endlessly just to keep the peace, or if you're learning that self-respect sometimes means walking away quietly, subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, healing, and choosing yourself without apology. And if you stayed until the end, thank you. Your time matters more than you know.